Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reisch. Thanks for watching Crime Talk, the most unbiased, fact-driven, true crime channel on YouTube. And today's docket, first, Suzanne Morphew, a case update. The word of the day is confusion. Second, petrified and paranoid. It could be the new lyrics to a song for R. Kelly, but it's just the way he is these days. Third, a bizarre case out of Nebraska. Fourth, Briana Taylor. We're going to be able to hear and possibly see what evidence was presented to the grand jury and what wasn't. Fifth, the only officer indicted in the Briana Taylor matter enters a plea of not guilty. A government official had so much time on his hands, he started a drug organization. And finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reisch. Thanks for watching Crime Talk. Now, if you haven't done so already, we would ask that you please hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that little bell in the corner so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. Now, tonight is Tuesday. That means Crime Talk goes live on Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Normally, we do Patreon right after that, but we're not going to be able to do that tonight because of some scheduling issues. But we will do it later this week. Now, first on the docket, the case of Suzanne Morphew, a case update. I think the word of the day is confusion. Now, so as you may recall, Andrew Mormon, the brother of Suzanne Morphew, organized a private search. The CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and the local sheriff were participating, but they weren't organizing it because of liability issues. Well, there was a lot of news traffic yesterday that a cadaver dog had a positive hit at a piece of property. It was unclear if it was near Barry Morphew's residence and it was a piece of property that he owned, or whether it was just a piece of property, a plot out there in Salida. Then there were reports that a second cadaver dog had a hit on the property, and everyone expected people to start digging. There were some photos and some information that was going around that looked like they were actually getting ready to dig, but nothing took place. And there were even reports as of last night, Andrew Mormon was camping on the site basically to protect it. Now, let's remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is somebody's private property. And it's also unclear if Barry Morphew, the husband, and the police have not called him a person of interest, but a lot of people think that he should perhaps be cooperating more, maybe participating in the search for his wife. Some people have said maybe he doesn't want to participate because he doesn't want to waste his time on a dead-end project, so to speak. Andrew Mormon has stated publicly that he doesn't think Barry Morphew is doing enough. He apparently is not cooperating with the police anymore and has refused to take a polygraph. All things completely within his right to do if the police think that he is in fact a suspect. But you have to look at these cases objectively and you can't jump to conclusions. The reality of it is, though, that the police say that no remains have been found in the Suzanne Morphew case, and that was as of late yesterday afternoon. The police are scheduled to have a news conference sometime later today, but it's unclear as to what they are going to say. They have issued a press release saying, contrary to some media reports, there have been no remains found in the Suzanne Morphew case. There have been a handful of potential leads that have been pursued as a result of a volunteer search. However, nothing has been identified as related to Suzanne's disappearance. Investigators will not comment on specific leads being investigated or other information concerned with this case. Also remember, you can't just go digging on somebody's property because you have a cadaver dog that has a hit. Obviously, you can ask for consent from the owner, or you can go and obtain a search warrant if you are in fact the police. That would be required, obviously, if this plot of land were in fact owned by Barry Morphew. You can't go searching on his property without a warrant or his consent. And even then, you have to be able to have probable cause based upon that. Now, these cadaver dogs, I have no reason to doubt that they are not being accurate. We've seen lots of times where these cadaver dogs come up with, obviously, the remains of people. When the police have to go seek a search warrant and they're relating it to a search of a dog, there has to be literally vouching for this particular dog. Literally, his little training and experience, and for lack of a better term, his resume will be at issue. Has he ever made a mistake? Have he alerted and said once they searched, there were in fact no remains? So it really gets somewhat tricky in that regard as to getting probable cause to actually go and dig. We'll wait and see what the police say today. Listen, the bottom line is Suzanne Morphew is missing. No one has been able to find her. And I'm sure if the police thought they had enough information to arrest, enough evidence to arrest anyone in this particular case, they would, but they don't. One thing that we all have to be cautious of is let's look and see what the true facts are. I appreciate Mr. Mormon and all of his efforts out there searching for his sister. It's very commendable. But we also have to stick to the facts, and we also have to stick to what is actually going to be admissible in court if and when charges are filed, if at all. All right. Next on the docket, Petrified and Paranoid. That's right. That could be a new song from R. Kelly. As you may recall, he's still sitting in custody waiting for his charges to be heard at trial based upon allegations of sexual assaults on children. And as you know, we've reported several times that back in August 25th at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Illinois, Mr. Kelly was attacked, and now he's been unable to sleep and is afraid to leave his cell. Can you imagine that? Mr. Kelly is a victim, oftentimes like the people that are accusing him of crimes. Now, the gentleman who has stated that he attacked Mr. Kelly, a gentleman by the name of Jeremiah Farmer. Now, I know people are going to say, how can you say he's a gentleman? That's just nice language to refer to people. What's what we do in court? It doesn't mean that we're giving him any greater respect, but I know somebody will say, how dare you call somebody in federal prison a gentleman? It's what you do. So Mr. Farmer is a Latin Kings member, and he was recently convicted of racketeering and conspiracy charges related to a 1990 murder of two gentlemen. That's right. There's more than one. That's that you refer to him as gentlemen. He was initially charged with beating the victims to death with a hammer at their auto business. Now, there's also been reports that Mr. Farmer, who has since been moved from the same facility as Mr. Kelly, has the words F-U-C-K, the feds, tattooed on his face. Clearly, he is going to be spending the rest of his life in prison, so I guess you can really take artistic license with your facial features for sure. And the other thing that's really bothering Mr. R. Kelly is the fact that he has not had his MP3 podcast recorder returned as well, which was purchased through the commentary. That would also include his earbuds. Life is getting tough for Mr. Kelly, no doubt. Mr. Kelly's trial dates have been postponed because of the coronavirus, and we'll see if they can, in fact, get him to trial before the fellow inmates get to him first. Next on the docket, a bizarre case out of Dawson County, Nebraska. Anyway, this trial began, and a woman is accused of luring a Tinder date to her death. Bailey Boswell is accused of conspiring with her boyfriend, a guy by the name of Aubrey Trail, to lure Sydney Loof 24 years old, to meet up for a date based upon their meeting on a dating app, which is commonly referred to as Tinder. Boswell's on trial for first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human remains. Trail's trial was conducted last year. He slit his own throat while in court after hearing the verdict and was rushed to the hospital. He survived after screaming, "Bailey is innocent," during his trial. Unfortunately, I doubt he'll be a witness for the defense. In December, Trail will find out whether he'll spend life in prison or whether he will actually receive the death penalty. Now, the district attorney is stating that Miss Boswell had an obsession with torture and murder, and how he claimed himself to be a vampire with numerous witches who gained power by killing people. The district attorney has also said that the evidence is going to show that the three women who are scheduled to testify will explain how Boswell and Trail had rules set forth for them, including discussions about torture, sex, and no clothes being allowed to be worn in their apartment. They had to wear dog collars and drinking from dog bowls, as well as group sex participation. The victim, Miss Loof, disappeared on November 15th of 2017 during a second date with Boswell. After the first date, Loof had actually told her friends that she had found her dream girl. Now, Boswell previously said she had spent the first date with Loof while they drove around Lincoln and smoked some weed. The following day, the pair went on a second date, and after Loof failed to show up to work at a hardware store where she was employed, her mother called the police, and the investigation ultimately led to Boswell and Mr. Trail. Ms. Boswell initially posted a video on Facebook explaining that she dropped Loof off at a friend's house after their second date, and they had made plans to go to a casino for their third date. Now, that post was ultimately removed. Miss Loof was eventually found on a rural road in central Nebraska, and obviously didn't turn out well because they had discovered that she had been dismembered and placed in several different trash bags. Now, Mr. Trail, who's been found guilty and then cut his own throat when the verdict was announced, stated that the whole thing was just a big accident. And while holding an object inside of the victim's mouth, he unintentionally killed her during a fantasy sexual role-playing game that they were engaging in. And Mr. Trail also stated to the police that he didn't contact the police because he just didn't think that they would believe him, given his alternative lifestyle. We'll obviously continue to follow this case. Somehow I think I know how it's going to turn out, but as always, every defendant is given the presumption of innocence here at Crime Talk, unless and until they have been found guilty by a jury of their peers or have actually pled guilty in a court of law. Well, if that story doesn't want you to go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, I'm not exactly sure what would. It's a dangerous world out there, ladies and gentlemen. You need to know that the people you're dealing with are, in fact, the people that you think you're dealing with. Check them out. What's the easiest way to do it? Go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. Yes, there is a nominal fee, but guess what? You can cancel at any time. But while you are a member, guess what you can do? You can search as many names as you want, and you can do it anonymously. No one's going to know that you searched them at all. And when you type in that information, literally, the computer goes to work and millions of public records are searched all over the United States, and a report is generated. And you are going to get information related to email addresses associated with this person that you're searching, phone numbers. And then you can ask yourselves, why do they have so many active phone numbers? That's interesting. You can look at their social media. Why do they use a different name in their social media? Those are the kinds of things you want to know and check out. And if your spidey senses get that feeling that something's not right, guess what? You make the right decision. Don't go meet somebody. Also in that report, you're going to get information about criminal background, property records, judgments, sex offender registration, and most importantly, marital and divorce records, ladies and gentlemen. Go to CrimeTalkSearch.com. You'll be happy you did. It is worth it. We use it here every day in my law practice to get a start on witnesses in our case, and it never ceases to amaze me what pops up on all the witnesses. It's always good stuff. Go to crimetalksearch.com, make the right decision. And you can only make the right decision when you have the information. Information is power to make good decisions. You'll be happy you did. Next on the docket, Briana Taylor. That's right. Big news last week. Only one indictment in that particular case related to Briana Taylor, and it had nothing to do with the actual death of Briana Taylor. Well, a lot of that had to do with the fact that the grand jury decided not to indict the other officers as it related to Briana Taylor. The legal theory being is that the officers were lawfully on the premises, i.e. because they had a search warrant. There's some issue about whether it was stale or not. But that Briana Taylor's boyfriend shot at the officers and therefore they could return fire. And unfortunately, Miss Briana Taylor was caught, for lack of a better term, in the crossfire. One round actually struck her in the heart, which was the fatal shot. So the Attorney General made their announcement and the case was going to actually be proceeding. The only officer that was indicted was former Officer Brett Hankinson, and he was only indicted for this reckless endangerment for shooting rounds into another apartment that had nothing to do with Briana Taylor. And thank goodness no one was hurt, but clearly you just don't randomly shoot rounds just because you hear gunshots. And that's really what the indictment says here. Now, Mr. Hankinson has pled not guilty. He's placed on a $15,000 bond, and he has to show up for all court appearances. He also has to surrender any firearms because he can't possess it while he's on bond. He faces up to 5 years in prison on each count if he's actually convicted. So the Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, stated last week no other charges are going to be filed. He felt terrible about it, and he said that he made a great presentation to the grand jury, and the grand jury has decided. A grand juror, through an attorney, has sought to have information released from the grand jury proceedings and also be allowed to speak. We've talked about this briefly before, but grand juries are conducted in secrecy, all right? You have a grand jury, which is usually between 12 to 25 jurors, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, and a grand jury, unless it is for a single event, hears lots of cases. In federal court and in most state cases, you have a right to be indicted via grand jury versus just a simple complaint and information. And so the grand jury is a group of citizens. They usually meet in a big grand jury room. Nobody knows who they are. They don't go around saying, I was selected for a grand jury. They are kept secret because they have information regarding ongoing cases and they hear evidence regarding cases and indictments. And so it's a grand jury, as opposed to what they refer to as a petite jury, which is what we have in the actual trial system. And that's different than what we have in a petite jury, which is actually what we have in the trial court system. So when you go to a jury trial, you are before a petite jury. Well, at the grand jury, like I said, they hear all types of information about different cases. And the grand jury just doesn't sit there all day long. They usually meet once, maybe twice a week, depending on the circumstances, because they have normal lives. They're everyday citizens. And the United States attorneys or the district attorneys will block out time. And if they have an ongoing investigation or they have to get in front of a grand jury to do an indictment, they'll literally block out, say, 15 minutes. They will bring in the detective and he will state what the crime was, why they believe probable cause exists, and conveniently the district attorney or United States attorney has an indictment and they sign it as a true bill indictment. Couple of things about the grand jury. Only the prosecutor is able to present evidence, all right? No defense attorneys are allowed. The defendant has no right to be there. They simply have to establish probable cause. Just like we've talked about when it comes to preliminary hearings, that's really what a grand jury does. Establish probable cause. Would a reasonable person believe that a crime was committed and that the defendant had something to do with it? That's all they have to show. Very low standard of proof versus proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the standard at trial. Normally, a grand jury never gets to speak about the evidence they heard or the evidence they didn't hear. It's a very extreme set of circumstances where a court would even allow a grand juror's identity to be revealed and to discuss what they heard in the grand jury. Now, the district attorney in this particular case, Daniel Cameron, stated that he would in fact comply with the court's order if the information is to be released. Now, I'm telling you, this is kind of a big deal, ladies and gentlemen. This normally doesn't happen. When I have a client that's indicted via an indictment, whether in federal court or state court, the prosecutors have to get permission to release the grand jury transcripts. Oftentimes, there are protective orders put in place where I cannot disseminate or distribute those grand jury transcripts to anyone. They take these matters very, very seriously. And this particular grand juror who's filed this motion with the court wants to talk about perhaps the fact that maybe all the evidence wasn't presented. Since come out that Mr. Attorney General Cameron has stated that maybe they didn't present all of the possible charging opportunities to the grand jury. Guess what? That's the prosecutor's prerogative to do so. I have seen personally where I have represented police officers who are the targets of the grand jury. And I'm like, I'm not going to bring my client in. And the attorney general's like, oh, go ahead. Don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. And coincidentally, there's no indictment coming down. The phrase you may have heard, you can indict a ham sandwich, means that's how simple it is to get a indictment from a grand jury. You put the evidence forward, boom, sign there, you're done. If the prosecutor doesn't want an indictment, it's just as easy not to get an indictment as well. Just something for you to consider. Now, I hope the transcripts or an audio recording of the evidence presented is released. I think this case is so important that people need to know what was presented or not presented. And I'm sure some people are going to say, how can you, Scott? The decision's been made. Listen, we need the truth. An open democracy demands the truth. The more things that the government does in secrecy, the more likely is, for lack of a better term, they're going to screw people, ladies and gentlemen. And we need that information open out there in the public. What the government does should be public. Let's see what comes out of these grand jury hearings, whether it's in the form of a transcript or recording. I frankly cannot wait. What's going to be very interesting about this information is, does the news conference by the Attorney General go in line with what was presented to the grand jury? Or was it two separate lines of speech that were being given in two separate locations? Let the truth be known. Let the chips fall where they may. That's what you get when you have a free and open society, which is a good thing. Next on the docket, don't you love it when government employees have so much time that they can start a criminal enterprise and, even better yet, use the public resources to really make that criminal enterprise a success? Well, a grand jury has indicted a Chester County supervisor, and that's in South Carolina, because he was allegedly using government cars to run a methamphetamine trafficking operation while on the clock at his government job. Now, this Chester County supervisor is a gentleman by the name of Kenneth Stewart. He is now charged with public corruption as well as, obviously, narcotics offenses. And apparently, when you're not running a drug ring and you use cars, you can apparently also conspire to steal catalytic converters from county-owned vehicles. Who knew that was even a thing? I didn't know there was a black market for catalytic converters, but apparently there is. Mr. Stewart actually has two indictments. One is conspiracy, 2 counts of distribution of methamphetamine, and common law misconduct in office. The second charges trafficking methamphetamine, 10 grams or more. The penalty for the felony crimes are 3 to 10 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. He's also been charged with an arrest warrant for trafficking methamphetamines over 400 grams, which is punishable by 25 to 30 years in prison and a $200,000 fine. You got to love when public servants really are out there caring for the people, giving it what they want. Apparently, drugs and catalytic converters. Who knew? Next on the docket, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. And today, we have a duo. Because like all partnerships, you got to take your strengths that you have and build upon your weaknesses with the other person with their strengths. That's right. So Larry Struthers, along with his partner, Jason Rappa, are charged with, get this, not only stealing a backpack from a victim, but stealing a prosthetic leg. That's right, a prosthetic leg. Perhaps there is a black market for prosthetic legs. Who knows? But that's what's happening. Can you imagine these guys walking down the street saying, I think I want that guy's prosthetic leg? Apparently, that may have happened. Kind of like a movie scene once. Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it was. Let's take a look.
That dude there, I need his prosthetic leg.
His leg?
Yeah. God knows I don't need the rest of him. Look at him, he's useless.
A fight ensued between Struthers, Rappa, and the man with the prosthetic leg. It's unclear whether the victim was assaulted with his own leg, but Struthers and Rappa were arrested about an hour later and charged with strong-armed robbery. In this particular case, perhaps it should have been strong leg robbery, but you know what I'm saying. So these two, Larry Struthers and Mr. Jason Rappa, you are a dumb criminal contestants of the day. Congratulations. Certainly, we will give you the presumption of innocence, no doubt. Now, if you want to have the prize that is coveted by dumb criminals everywhere, that's right, a Crime Talk mug. That's right. Look at that thing. And then we got the new design that just came out. See that? Good looking mug. Well, there's lots of other merchandise out there. So go to the link below, hit Teespring, boom, it'll take you straight to the site. You can shop, you can order online. It's quick and easy, and they will have your mug to your house before you know it. And you don't even have to become a dumb criminal contestant of the day. All right. That's all we have today. Let me know what your comments are, your thoughts are regarding the Suzanne Morphew case. This thing is turning into a real cluster, to say the least. Let me know if you think R. Kelly is getting any sympathy whatsoever, or do you think he deserves it? You know, that's what happens when you're an accused sexual offender, AKA, as they call them in the prison system, chili moes. That's right. Let me know what you think. Sympathy or not? And also, let me know your thoughts about the Briana Taylor case. I think it's good that the information is going to be released. Everyone should listen to it so they can make up their own mind and, frankly, stop the speculation about what was presented, what wasn't, and whether charges should or should not have been filed. Let the people decide. And, of course, you got to love the ingenuity of public employees that can go about and start up drug organizations while at work. Let me know what you think. Don't forget, tonight we go live 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll do our Patreon another night. But if you haven't become a Patreon member, please do so by hitting the link, signing up, and you'll really like the Patreon because you can actually call in. It's a limited number of members, and we talk true crime. We talk the law. We talk about everything you want to talk about. And a special feature that's come up in Patreon. That's right. We ask the Magic 8 Ball some serious questions. And I don't think the Magic 8 Ball's done us wrong just yet. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.